This episode of Wake Up Jab is sponsored in part by Balance Patch, Remy Wallaby Khalil's Street Fighter V character drawings, and of course,
American Dragon, Dragon up.
Hey everybody, welcome to Wake Up Jab. This is Draken.
I'm Burkish.
And our special guest for today is Steven Bankert, aka UpToSnuff. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great. Pleasure to be on the podcast. Big fan of your guys' content.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, we have a fan? We have a singular fan.
Oh my god, one fan.
You have
That's too
greater
good.
than one fan. Greater than or equal to one fan.
At least one, exactly. So Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're, of course, one of the better players in the NEFGC. You are from Connecticut. But I feel like a lot of players in NEFGC outside of Connecticut don't necessarily know who you are outside of you're a scary Nikali.
Of course. So in addition to being a scary Nikali, I'm 23. I'm from Pennsylvania originally. I graduated college from Delaware in 2016, moved to Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Joined my first tournament in June of 2016, which was my first grid, which is the weekly that we do, or the bi-weekly rather.
Yep.
That is hosted in Manchester, Connecticut. Got third, got hooked. And I was like, man, why can't I beat Cheeseburger? So
I think he was like the guy to beat back then too, because that was right before Evo, right?
Yeah.
You got top 64.
Were you
Evo
going by
last year.
Assassinator then, or were people just calling you that?
that was more of just a so I came in and there was a bounty on Jarek, so Metalface at the time.
Right.
I had no idea.
He played Armika back then.
Yep. During the tournament, I was matched up against him first round, and our game went like all the way down to the wire, but I ended up beating him. And then he like freaks out and he's like, "Oh, who is this man? Like, oh, is this like?" Then I told him a little bit about myself, and he was like, "Yo, Pennsylvania sent this like assassinator to come to come take us out." So it's kind of been like a running joke.
Not even an assassin, an assassinator.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's
And it's
actually
funny
really
too
cool.
because it always reminds me of like some 12-year-old playing Laser Quest, And it's like, oh, pick your
Exactly.
nickname. And they're like, oh, I want to be the assassinator.
All you're missing is the XX to make it a
Yeah.
video game tag.
I
you
need an
know?
XX and a 69 or a 420.
Yeah.
So that's been like a fun, like, and they, like, if you're watching like a mixed martial arts fight or a boxing fight, and like someone, it's like, oh, John, the refrigerator Connor or something. Like they'll have some like stupid like extra tag. That's kind of how I think
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, this is a random thought, but like, remember Drake and how we were at Balance Patch one week and you were announcing one of the guys' names was SF5 is bad?
Yeah,
And like,
right.
you weren't there, Steve, but like,
Similar.
I think this person purposely was avoiding Draken because Draken had to keep shouting SF5 is bad because that was the
Yeah.
name of the guy in the bracket.
And after a little bit, I was getting into it, like I was kind of like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's like, how funny would it be? Like, one of us gets top 8 at Balance Patch. I mean, at this Red Bull event, like Steve did, and just like had your name as SF5 is bad. So
Yeah.
like, James
SF5 is
Chen
bad.
has to announce it on the Ultra channel.
Right, looking for a SF5 is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like who was it? Like the fake announcement that Daigo lost to Shinakuma 666
Yeah.
or something like that.
That was a
one Evo. That was like Evo 2009 or something.
Yeah.
It was,
no, that wasn't that
was
long
something.
ago.
It was it?
That was a couple years. Probably like 2, 3 years.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty funny.
Either way, yeah.
But you
But
know,
anyway,
Steve.
so the handle's up to snuff.
Right.
And what else? Yeah, so I've been competing for about a year and a half. And it's really been great to kind of go from, how do I win my local and figure that out. I think that took me a couple months. And then like, oh, how do I place at monthlies? And then how do I place on the national stage? And it's really been a great testament to like keeping the practice routine going
Yeah.
and just like doing your best and sticking with it. And like, we can get more into this later, but like what matters in this game?
Right. Did you start with Street Fighter V?
Like competitively?
Or just in fighting games in general.
just fighting games in general.
I've been like sort of playing fighting games all my life. I like to joke that I cut my teeth on the old WWF N64 games because like I was doing meaties then. I didn't know they were meaties at the time. But I was like, if I like time this attack for as soon as they get up, they can't do anything.
Right.
So
That's too
are you
funny.
saying you have that WWF tech still?
Yeah, I mean, I choke slam people all day. That's why Beef's my favorite. But yeah, so like I remember playing Street Fighter 2 on my grandma's Super Nintendo when I was like 8 or 9, and I only played Ryu because I love Dragon Ball Z. And I was like, yo, the Hadoken's like almost like the Kamehameha. So like this guy's essentially Goku. And I was like, yo, sweet, Fireball.
Yeah. And it's great because it's kind of looped back around to in DBFC. They're calling Kamehamehas fireballs.
Yeah, so it's kind of this like this beautiful full circle thing.
Yeah.
But just like very casual with fighters my whole life. None of my friends ever liked to play them. I'm realizing now it's probably just because like I had a natural affinity for it and it wasn't fun for them, which is totally understandable. But I played like all sorts of fighting games, just never really taking them seriously until Street Fighter 4. But even then, it was a case where I didn't have resources to travel, so I just like watched pros play and I played my scrubby Ryu online, and it was fun. But I never really dreamed of doing anything more than that with the game.
Well, you are.
I know.
Yeah, honestly.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know how fast you improved. I figured you just showed up and were immediately winning.
Oh no, it was my first tournament was third, and then like second, fourth, second win. Took like 5 or 6 till I'd start winning. But it was
just 5 or 6. It only took me like 3 years, you know. Whatever. Yeah, just 5 or 6.
But like getting used to the whole like competitive environment was fun. That was a process at the beginning, and like how you have to like think it. We can also, this is kind of like more of a topic for later once again, but like how to think about playing the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. For sure. Cool. Well, quick announcement. Balance patch later this week. So this Friday, right after Thanksgiving, we'll have Dominion coming by. So NLBC, very good player from New York. If you don't know him, you will know him this Friday. And we may have a special event planned with Dominion on Friday as well. But yeah, Steve, thanks for letting us know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course.
Could you we'll also be talking about Red Bull Battlegrounds, so a little bit of a retrospective, how y'all felt about the event. So it's just like kind of your personal experience, whether you liked it or not, but also both of y'all's journeys through the bracket, because I know both of you got top 64 and Steve actually got top 8 on Saturday. So Steve, I'd like to start with you.
Sure.
What do you think of Red Bull Battlegrounds just in general, and tell us about how you did?
Sure. In general, loved the event. It was a super great opportunity for everybody in the area to kind of show what they could do on a national stage. And it was so, probably like the best, drawing feature of it was just the price tag.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think for the entire weekend, I spent like $60, including food. Like, it was insane how affordable it was. I can only imagine it's even better for people who are local.
Oh my god, it was so crazy. Like, I literally just bought a $2 Uber and I'm next to Smug. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah. And especially after Evo and just like having to like budget for a tournament, like just being able to go to a major and not have to think about it was really a treat. In terms of the actual like logistics of the tournament, it was a little whack, unfortunately. There were issues with, like TOs DQing people. I know I actually saw Zaf had a interaction where he like was supposed to play for 4 and he told them he was playing 5 and they were like, oh, okay, cool, no worries. And he comes back and he was DQ'd and he was like, oh, I told you I had to go. And the guy was like, whoa, what's going on, blah. And that was really disheartening. I think Kevin Tech got disqualified from 5.
Yeah, he did from winners.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a real shame. And then even I think for Domo was telling me he actually was eliminated from the tournament just by like losing. But when they did like the reformatted like frozen brackets, they put him back in and he made it out in winners. So like, which is great for him, and like I'm glad he got the old Phoenix treatment. But like,
that's still TO's messing up.
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah.
it's weird because I don't want to blame the TOs. Like, it is their fault, and like obviously that's just what it is. There's no other way to assign blame. But they seemed pretty unfamiliar with what we were doing, which is fine.
As in maybe they had no idea.
Yeah, I mean,
what they
you
were
could
doing.
argue that
Yeah.
they had zero idea what was going on, which once again is fine if that's them like getting their feet wet, but it might be helpful in the future if they do like a little dry run of, you know, what it means to organize a tournament. Just make sure everybody can like perform it on some basic level, because it gets crazy. Like even
And it was crazy.
yeah, like even having like I felt bad for their larynxes because people were just like shouting nonstop. Like if you don't have a booming voice, like good luck getting heard in that
Yeah.
type of environment. But
Yeah.
in terms outside of the logistics, actually, Nick, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh no, he can keep going.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I will add one thing. After Kevin Tech got disqualified in winners, he did lose to Almas in losers.
That is true.
That is the only thing I shall add. We can move on.
Yeah, we'll talk about how people did in the overall tournament outside of you two, because I think that's definitely worth discussing.
Okay, but should I go on to my experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So it was weird going into it. I was more nervous than usual, just because of like the prestige that I was assigning with the tournament. I was more nervous than Evo, which was weird. I think just because of the whole like defend your hometown aspect and like wanting to represent the Northeast. And then you guys on your podcast had predicted that I would go far. And I was like, oh, I really want to like live up to this prediction. So I kind of felt like I was like fighting for the NEFGC to some extent. So like a little anime shit right there.
Yeah. This is my
and
destiny.
Yeah. And also, this is kind of like a little fun extra fact. So I take or I used to take a medicine that would lower my heart rate to which would like help me with this one like genetic thing that I have. But my doctor actually took me off that. So I was having withdrawal symptoms and my heart rate was like super fast on its own. So I was probably like doing 120 beats a minute nonstop on Saturday. So I was like stressed out about that. And like all together, I was just like, there's so much energy going on.
Wow.
I'm very anxious. Please, I don't want my heart to blow up. But I like to think maybe that gave me some extra oxygen or some shit. But when we get to the actual matches, though, I played Zangief from Brooklyn, game 1. He actually beat me game 1. And I was like, oh no, round 1 loss. Here we go. But I settled it down, was able to beat him. Then I had my match with LPN, which I had been, studying for, and I really, really wanted to beat him. And that went down to me taking the first game and then losing game 2 on a pixel trade off an anti-air.
Yeah.
Which,
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was heartbreaking.
yeah, broke my heart. And I was happy I was able to keep it together for game 3, even though I ended up losing. But that was a big moment of just like understanding that like uppercutting is a big deal. And I think one thing that my game is missing right now is reliable anti-air uppercuts. And like that kind of got exposed right there. And ultimately it ended up working out because I think being in losers actually helped me in this tournament. But like I really wanted the notch on the belt of beating LPN. And I do think I actually did like beat him, but I couldn't execute the victory.
So
Which
do you want
was
to go over
a
like
shame.
the players, maybe the players we would know that you beat? Because I was playing casuals during a lot of your bracket because I was already eliminated. So I'm not sure the exact players you faced.
Sure. So I fought this dude named the Good Ryan, was my top 32 or my top 64 match, the first match of top 64. I fought Craymore, the co-lane player, so he's Dominion's brother. I fought who else? I fought Zaf.
You fought OG Yan.
I fought OG Yan. I fought A While, who is this Akuma player from Buffalo, who I'd actually ran into at Summer Jam. And I fought JB. I think it was everybody else I fought in the bracket. And most of those, it's funny, I actually had more trouble with pools than I did with any other stage of the tournament. Every game I played in pools, I dropped a game. Or every set I played in pools, I dropped a game. I think I actually lost more games total in pools than I did in top 64, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, because in
Like,
top 64,
I was watching all of your...
Yeah, I was just like rolling through people. Like
It
it
was not
felt,
my experience.
yeah, it was. And I think honestly, I had a little bit of luck in terms of just like I was lucky to face up against players who I'd either faced before or I had experience against their characters. This is excluding OG on because Lara's still like really scary. But I don't know. I just felt really comfortable. I was joking with I forget who it was beforehand, but saying that like the thing you want to try to achieve in tournament is you want to feel like you're playing in your room or your basement or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
And I just felt like totally in focus and totally like within myself. So I was just, I mean, I'm gonna toot my own horn a little bit. I felt like I was just like annihilating people left and right. Like the
You
games
were
weren't.
assassinating them. You could
I was assassinating them.
say.
You really were though, up to JB, and even then it was 3-2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Like I would argue most of those sets weren't competitive.
yeah,
Wow.
I completely agree. When I was watching those,
Yeah, which is great. But just like interesting. It was nice to kind of like hit that like sweet spot mentally, and be able to execute. But I'd say probably the highlight of the tournament for me was getting to fight JB again, who's had my number. Last 2 times I've been to next level, he beat me. And each time I've done a little bit better, from getting like absolutely destroyed to first time I fought him, to almost taking it the last time I was at Brooklyn. And then, almost taking it in a 5-game set this time, which was, really exciting for me.
Yeah, 3-2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it was after him going up 2-0 too. So I was like, oh man,
that's
like
crazy.
I felt the pressure.
It's always hard that 5th game when like it's almost like since you know it's 2-2, your mind kind of comes out of it for a second, and you have to like pull yourself back in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, oh, nothing else that's happened during the set matters until right now.
There was a huge crowd around y'all for that game too, because it was top 8 losers.
Yep.
I'm still looking, and there are a ton of people taking pictures and videos. So I'm looking for those. I just can't find them anywhere because that would be like the perfect set to kind of look back on.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of media.
Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of wonder where the archives are for that.
Yeah.
But I'd say the fight with JB was probably my favorite set of the tournament, and then my fight with Zaf, which was a heartbreaker again because I really dislike team killing. And I'd already have to. I consider Zaf to be, a good buddy in the scene. And earlier in pools, I had to knock out a JD who goes by KO, and like I hated that. I hate doing that. So doing it to Zaf, and I could see all the emotion that he was carrying, and all of like, that drive to win and that drive to succeed, and all of that, especially when he beat Dominion, like that was just dripping all over him. It was apparent that he like really, really wanted this.
Yeah.
And that was just rough because I think I would have been just as happy winning as I would have been losing. And the funny part about that is both of that level of happiness, or both of those levels of happiness, are like barely greater than 0. It was
right.
It was not
team kills suck.
not enjoyable. But I mean, I'm glad it was me. Obviously, like I would prefer to be in a tournament rather than Fallout. But
for sure.
Yeah, but that was tough. But altogether, really, really happy with my play. I was also happy when I beat a while the Akuma player and OG on the Lara player. Each of them had eliminated Kevin Jules, Island Boy, and Doug Cheeseburger, respectively.
Yep.
Nice, a little bit of revenge.
So, yeah.
OG on actually eliminated a lot of people,
yeah,
which was really frustrating to me because we do have a lack of Loras in this scene.
We do.
So, and I don't think he was doing anything particularly special, but I feel like a lot of people just don't have that experience. So I was really happy that you did beat him despite the lack of Loras, just because you kind of understood what he was doing in the match.
Yeah, and I think I think he only took 1 round, but the round he did take, I could see like the situation.
You just guessed wrong.
Yeah, but his like ability to just turn it on once the mix-up started was really scary.
It's very strong
and really potent. So I was like, okay, that's what I need to avoid.
Oh, you gave him a thumbs up for that round. I remember, like, you reached your thumb up above the monitor.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at it real quick.
Yeah. I was impressed.
So good.
I was impressed.
Yeah, I know. But like nobody else does that. It's
Dude, honestly, Steve, like this is like true. I remember when I first met you, when you first came to the GU, and you were always at first, like, this is just my first impression was I didn't like you. But the reason why was because when we were playing, you kept complimenting me, and I was like, this dude's full of it. He doesn't mean it. He's just like doing it, to get in my head or something. Like I thought you were being sarcastic, But no, that's just like you actually felt that way.
See, everybody says that about Steve when they first meet him. I just took it at face value. Like, because I played you at GU as well, Steve. That was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, top 4 at one of the round robins or whatever. And you complimented me. I was like, yeah, thanks. I was like, yeah, cool. Like, you just seem cool. But it seems like most people do think it's some kind of like sarcastic thing.
Yeah,
Just like,
that's what I
trying
thought
to get
because I
money.
remember the first time 'cause when I first met Steve, we played at like a GU monthly. I don't really remember to be honest.
Yeah,
but...
you were my first round match. And
Oh,
I was
what?
like, yo, what the fuck? That was really close.
Oh yeah, you're like, damn, Mass is sick.
So funny. It's so good.
Yeah, then I saw you
So
ended
good.
up, I think you got 3rd at that tournament. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I just got like the shit seating. And,
Yeah,
like,
for
it
sure.
worked out. But it's funny you mentioned that too, because my first time, I mentioned when I fought Jarek for the first time. And like that was kind of like the birth of my relationship with this whole scene. He confirmed Stand Strong into EX Peach,
Yeah.
which now is like, you know, in every Miko's toolkit, but I'd never seen at the time. So as soon as he did that, I was like, "Ooh, nice confirm." And he tells me that like tilted him for the rest of the set.
That's, yeah.
And he was like, this fucking guy complimenting me.
Being nice is great. Talking in a set really tilts a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, you two are both avid talkers during match.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best.
Yeah.
I'm sure it makes it easier for you guys to like keep it lighthearted, right? Because like that must be an easy way to let off nerves. Or I can't talk.
Yeah, like for tournaments, for me, very easy, right? Because I can talk to my opponent and be like, yeah, that was good, or like, you know, whatever. And casuals, for some reason, I just get so tilted. I don't understand. But we talked about this.
I'll never understand why you get so tilted in casuals.
I don't know. But in tournaments, it's just like I'm having fun. In casuals, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, I've been working on trying to switch it in between like joking, lighthearted mode and killer mode, I guess.
Ooh. Yeah, because you have the perfect stare for it.
Yeah,
No joke.
And that's like kind of happens on its own. Like it's an unintentional like face that I make, which I feel like kind of weird about. But it's like I've noticed sometimes I'll joke too much and I'll throw myself out of the competitive mindset. And like I'll start treating it more as just like a for fun match, which can be strong, but against really top players, I found that ends up hurting me more than it helps.
Right. Yeah.
So that's been a recent development, trying to like bridge the gap between like interacting with your opponent, but also like keeping yourself in the right mental space.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty much all my thoughts about my run.
And that will totally work for when we talk about how to think.
Yes.
During
of course.
fighting games. Yeah, Nick, what did you think of Red Bull?
So yeah, I thought the event was awesome, just for the pure reason that we got to play against like all these out of town players and like got all that experience. Like the way I was thinking going into this event was like I don't really care about winning, I just care about getting better. Which I definitely think is something I did. Like I didn't, you know, like in terms of the bracket, I got like top 64 and then I pretty much got insta-bodied. Which sounds like a weird like, you know, microwave quick meal. But you know, just to start from the beginning. So like first thing I went to the Red Bull pre-party, which was at Balance Patch. And there I was playing casuals against like a ton of people, and there was a lot of people I was playing casuals against that I didn't know were top players, but I just assumed like I was like I don't know who this person's name is, but when they tell me, I assume I'm gonna know because they're really good. So like I played against Squall a lot, who's like a really good Nikali player, which I didn't know was Squall, but like I was doing really well against him, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm Squall." I was like, "Okay, that makes sense," because he's like really good. I played against the cool kid who his Abigail was just destroying me. He's the only player the entire weekend that I just could not touch. But so that was really good, and I just felt really good to stack myself up against like the top players. Really, like, because I wasn't really sure how I would do, because like I do really well in mass, but I was like, how easy or how impossible are these players going to be? And I was surprised how beatable everybody seemed.
You also beat Punk in a money match.
I did. And you know what? It was his Ken and Akuma, but all I'm saying is I beat Punk. So
hey, his Ken's not bad at all.
On technicality, I beat Punk. No one else in mass did. And moving on.
Oh, I beat him online.
Okay, fine. Me and Draken are the only ones. So me and Draken are the best. Everyone else can hold that. I still have that $5 in my wallet.
Nick.
Yeah.
I also beat
Steve?
Punk online.
Don't do this. Are you going to tell me everyone in mass is beating Punk online? And that my victory means absolutely nothing.
I don't know.
Don't
Money
ruin
matches
my life
matter
like
more.
this, okay? This is the one
Yeah.
thing I have. Moving on.
right.
No, you did great. You did great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the tournament itself, I think the brackets were run like shit. I think everybody agrees. I was super pissed when after pools, like there was like that frozen like 2 hour period where I just like, I don't know, like you're kind of in it when you're playing, and then that kind of took me out of it.
Yep.
But aside from that, we'll just keep on the good stuff because it was mainly just like a good thing. It was really good to meet all like the players. Like I've known Shine for years, so like we first met online, and we were both Yang players, so like we kind of connected on that. And then we met at Defend the North, where like we were like, hey, like you're that Yang player, and then we've also met at NWC, so it was cool to see him again. He's a nice guy. Smug, I've also like Smug, like we don't really talk ever, like we don't exchange words, but we know each other, so like we always give each other that like acknowledgement head nod,
Yep.
and that's kind of it. But like, you know, I played him a lot in casuals, and so it was really nice to meet him. I met Snake Eyes, who I've always wanted to meet, and he was super nice. I actually met him. He was doing like runs through targets, like he was going to different targets in Boston.
Yeah.
So
I
the
heard
second
about
the second I heard he was at the target near me, I was at my work study. I literally just left.
that.
And I was like, I just ran a target. I was like, let's go play Snake Eyes. And they didn't have DLC, but it was still fun to like meet him just because like he's one of my favorite like personalities. Like I just love his like personality and his attitude.
Yep.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for like the intro of it. In terms of like the bracket itself, again, I'm not like super pleased, I guess, with my placement, but I didn't really want to care as much about my placement and more about how I was like, because this is my first test really in Street Fighter V since what was it, Guts? Because that was the only other time that I was really able to test how good I am, and I did really well. I got like third at Guts, but it's been a while, and the game has changed a lot since then, and it hasn't been. It's been a while since I've sort of tested myself. So it felt, you know, like my bracket was like pretty ridiculous. So like my first match I played against this I think he played Balrog and then switched here, and he wasn't extremely good, but he was a super nice guy. And then my next match I had to play Lucky D, which this match was kind of crazy because
Yeah.
like going into it I wasn't nervous, but like it was this weird thing where my hands were nervous when my mind wasn't. I don't know if you like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I think my hands were just shaky.
I've had that issue.
Where
Yep.
like in my mind is clear. Like I'm not anxious. Like my, you know, like I felt normal, but my hands just were not responding like the way they should have been. So like I missed like, you know, so, like Urian knee dive is a down up charge. I can't tell you how many like jump back kicks I was getting just because like I physically wasn't charging enough. Like my hands just weren't doing what I wanted them to do. But that match was crazy because I could tell how much Lucky D had thought about it, and how little I had thought about it. Because I was not thinking about it at all. I can't even lie. I love Dan, but like I was like trying to like just be like, okay, I just need to run over Lucky D and keep going. But it did not work out that way at all. He was doing amazing. And
Yeah,
I
Dan,
didn't.
he came to play.
Yeah, he came to play, and I didn't really notice this, but like there was a million people watching. Like literally, like the entire event. It seemed like I was watching. Like they formed a circle around this match because they wanted Dan
Yep.
to win, which I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
surprised. Like you should,
Everybody wants
you
Dan to
should
win.
want Dan to win. Like if you don't want Dan to win in that matchup, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And that match was super intense. Like he was doing a super good job, and I was being super nervous. And like eventually, I sort of figured some stuff out. But it was 1-1, and in this third match, first round, his jab broke, his jab button.
Yep.
Like he pressed it too hard because he goes ham on those buttons. Like he presses those mad hard. So like the jab button got physically stuck, and eventually he popped that out. But like I was like, what just happened? Like he just like I had cornered him, and at some point he just stopped moving. And so he literally stood up during the match and was like, I was like, what are you doing? So like I just kept going. Like I was like, I'm not gonna take this chance. So I just killed him, but I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. But I think
No, you did the right thing.
it was weird. Like I was like, why did he stop? Because I understand that his jab broke, but like nothing can change. He should have just kept playing without a jab because I just kept going. Like
Yeah.
because like I'm not just gonna, you know, I just have to keep going. And then the last round I won like very easily, but I just got upset about the fact that, you know, that round could have gone differently. Like I had Dalsum in the corner, so like you can assume what would happen, but I mean you never know what can happen. And there was also the first game was a double KO.
Yep.
Also,
Oh, that's nice.
which that was when I really felt like I let all my nerves out was during that double KO because like he read my my EX knee, but he read it incorrectly. He tried to read it with a jump back button, which the way you do it is also you do back fierce, which is that up You know that big upward angled punch,
Yep.
Yeah.
which and we ended up trading and it was a double KO. But then after that, I like went to character select screen, like I drank some water and like I was able to kind of cool off after that. But in general, I was just like, I don't know, it was just kind of a sad victory, just because one, I had to beat Dan, and two, the way it happened, I was not happy with. But the good thing about that match was like I feel like I let all my nerves out in that match. So like after that, my hands like felt normal again. I think it was just like kind of like this like first match you have to get over it. Like I don't know
Yep.
if it was like that with you for LPN or maybe you didn't have that at all. But
No,
yeah, for me, yeah, you go.
oh, sure. I was gonna say that I've noticed that too with myself. Like, it normally takes one or two matches to kind of get everything to calm down a little bit.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
like I'll be in the right mindset, but it's just like that's why I think playing before a tournament is so important because you have to get like used to being in the venue and like playing it eventually. Like for me, it's kind of like a wave, and everything sort of just like washes down, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm ready. Let's play.
Yeah,
Um,
having the headsets helps a lot just to like be able to tone out because like I know during that match everyone was like screaming probably so but I just couldn't hear because I had my volume on ridiculously high. Um, but yeah, that was the Dan match, and then the next match was the winners finals of my pool where I played Kami, which so I actually pulled Steve aside because I wanted to play casuals against him because Kami plays Nakali, and so I played Steve a lot and even at first during casuals, I think I was still recovering from that Lucky D match, and I just wasn't playing like myself, kind of. But like the longer we played, the more comfortable I felt, and the more like in my head, I had already won against Kami. I was like, "There's no way he's ready for like this random Urian player to know the Nakali matchup."
mhm.
Um, and then when I played Kami, it went super well. Like I don't think he took a round off. Maybe he
Yeah,
maybe
dude,
took one round,
you dusted him. That
but
was it was not competitive.
I will say I did not get a single Aegis reflector. I never Aegised him because I don't think I
That's
ever
pretty
got Aegis.
good.
So it went super well, and I was super happy with it. And then that's when my luck started to run out. But so the next match I had was against King Birdie, who I don't know the Birdie matchup at all. So like I know it's good for Urian, but I just haven't played enough birdies, especially recently. Like I feel like back earlier when Doug played Birdie, I would have known the matchup more. But I just like recently I had played like zero birdies, so I was just not comfortable at all with the matchup. So I was like constantly like I was running around asking everybody I knew things about Birdie. Like I was asking Drake and stuff. I was asking you stuff, Steve. I was asking Dan Cravat a lot. I was asking everybody that I knew things about Birdie, and I figured out a lot. But it was kind of too little, too late because King Birdie, I realized I never played him, so I wasn't sure what type of player he is. He's the type of player that will beat you once, but will never beat you again because he relies on certain gimmicky play styles. It's not even that he's a gimmicky player; like he's pretty solid, but his strategy is so simple and he never changes it. And so he's one of those players where like he beat me. Like I think it was 2-1, and it was like to the hair, super super close. Because there was one point where I had him one hit away from stun. If I had and I did
Yep.
like forward medium punch. If I had done an overhead finisher, he would have stunned. I would have won. But I went low and he just blocked. If I had hit that, I would have won. But it was super close. He ended up winning. And I just wasn't ready for him basically. Like I tried to just go like as hard as I could, but I just hadn't adapted to his basic strategies quick enough. But so afterwards we played in casuals and I washed him. Like it was super free. And I was like, damn, why couldn't I do that in tournament? But it's my own fault for just not being ready for birdie. So in the future I'll be ready. But the other player I played against was Nephew, who's a Colleen player, and I don't think I've ever gotten beaten worse in tournament than when I played Nephew. Like I do not know now. I know Colleen a little better because I played against Aaron, who's a CT player. But when I played against Nephew in tournament, it was ridiculously free. Like I didn't even know some of Colleen's moves. It was that bad. It was like I said, like the fourth time I had ever played Colleen online offline. Like I never played against that character.
Yeah, and he's good too.
And he's super good. Which now I really want to play Nephew again after playing Aaron because now like in my head I know the matchup so much better. But I'm fine. Like my bracket was like it couldn't have been more unfortunate for me because like there were a ton of players. I was like, oh, if I play K-Brad, I could beat K-Brad. If I play Tampa Bison LPN, I can beat those guys. I feel good about those matchups.
So
But
nephew is in Pennsylvania right now. You could probably hit him up and ask for online
on casuals,
slots.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that
Yeah.
without a doubt. I want to play like first to 100 with that guy. But you know, in my head, I was like, felt unfortunate because I was like, I feel like if I had a different bracket, I could have got top 8. But like, you can't think that way. So at the end of the day, I think it was a good thing that I had these matchups that I didn't know at all, because it forced me to immediately learn them, and it kind of like made me realize like you can't just not know a matchup, especially in this type of tournament, right? Because there are no Colleen players in mass other than Aaron, but I haven't played against Aaron in tournament in forever. But if I want to do good, in a global tournament, you have to learn those matchups. So
Yep.
it was definitely a good lesson in that sense. Overall, I feel like another thing is all the top players, they'll punish everything. So like you can get away with murder in mass, but against these players, they notice everything. So you have to play super clean. Like you have to just be constantly aware of your own tells, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Whereas like against player from mass, like I'm not trying to discount ourselves, but we can kind of get away with more. Just because we're not like at that super top level. And the main person I'm saying this is for Smug, because I played like a ton of matches with Smug, and I noticed like every little tell I gave him, he would try to punish. And he was super smart about it. So that was like one thing I realized is you have to not only realize what your opponent is doing and adapt to them, you have to realize what you're giving your opponent, what information you're giving them, and you have to just like get ready for them to adapt, because you know what I mean. And in the adaptation, it was crazy. It's like ridiculous. It's an instant. You know what I mean? Like they instantly adapt. Like they see me do this thing once and they're instantly ready, which is just something that I just wasn't ready for. But it was just casuals. But overall, I was super happy with the event. I was happy like how much I feel like I've improved even just from playing a bunch of different players. Yeah, I also played Dominion in casuals, which he played Ed, which his Ed isn't super strong, but his Guile is super good. And that is basically it. I had a ton of fun. And then afterwards, I played casuals against Aaron, who's a Colleen player, and I feel like I learned a lot. So I'm super happy with the event. I just liked the opportunity to play against these awesome players, even though the event was run terribly. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah.
Yes, it was an awesome event. I wasn't able to compete, but I did play a little bit of casuals, and I got to see a lot of old friends that I haven't seen in a long time, which is awesome. Like, I really hope there's another Boston event next year. If it's another Red Bull event, that's cool. If it's some other kind of major, that'd be awesome too. It was just really nice to see a lot of people from all over New England, not just Massachusetts, but from like CT and Rhode Island and New Hampshire, etc. I just haven't seen in so long. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I also got to hang out with
fun.
CT guys in their hotel and play some casuals, because y'all are still kind of foreign to me. So it's really nice to like not necessarily play international players, right? But I was able to get a little bit more experience.
Yeah, expand that network a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
And there was that who is that Nikali from Mosey from New York or something?
His name's, I think his handle's Yams. He goes by Yams. His name is
Yams,
Yancy, I
He
believe.
was a good player too.
Yeah, he's solid. He's because he really wanted a 1-5 with me because he's friends with Hoji. And I beat him like really free, and he was super salty about it. So at first I like really didn't like him, because I was like, man, you're gonna like be salty with this stranger who you like asked for games who you've never met.
Yeah.
Who beat you, and it wasn't close. But he's a nice guy. He just wants to get better. And he was solid. We also traveled with a Fong player who also got top 8. And his name was Aziz. His handle's General Kills. He was a really cool guy. His Fong was super solid. So it was nice to like through being friends with Hoji, I've actually got a lot more matchup experience with different characters and have met a lot of the New York guys, which is cool.
Yeah, Hoji's great. I got to play him in person for the first time this past weekend, and it's really nice to play people in person as opposed to online, because he just plays completely different in person.
He does. He's able to.
He's a much better player.
Yeah, he's able to do the strong parts of his game.
Yeah, which is a lot of footsies, a lot of whip punishing, which is so much harder online.
Oh my god, it's so much easier offline. It's crazy.
Yeah, so much easier offline. I mean, yeah. Cool. Let's talk a little about how everybody in NEFGC did and what we expected. So UpToSnuff, congrats on top 8. Of course, we kind of expected that if anybody was going to get top 8.
We almost, just want to say, me and Jaken almost perfectly predicted what happened, because we said if anyone's getting top 8, it's Steve, and I said Wolfcrone's winning. Wolfcrone got second.
Yeah, I was wrong about Nephew. I was so sure Nephew would get top 8, and that was just more based off of nobody knows Colleen. But I mean, Neon got top 3, so I guess I was close. I'll say I was close enough. But yeah, you were right about Wolf Prone. We were right about UpToSnuff. But in general, I was pretty happy with how NEFGC did. I was hoping that we could get 2 people in top 8, and if it was 2 people, it's going to be like Zaf and UpToSnuff or Barkish and UpToSnuff, I thought. But the person who actually did best, there's actually 3 people that got 17th. So that's second highest
AJ,
after
right?
UpToSnuff. Yeah, AJ, Zaf, and Island Boy.
Yep.
And AJ did awesome. He beat Nephew, for example, who was that Colleen player that knocked out a couple people, including Burkish here. Zaf, of course, is Zaf. He did well. I forget exactly who he beat.
He beat a Dominion.
He beat Dominion. Yes, right. So we'll see if we see the run back on Friday. And then Island Boy did very well as well. Did he just play Vega? That's correct, right?
Vega the
Awesome.
whole way.
Yeah, so we had 2 MA representatives and 2 CT representatives in top 17, which is great. After that, this is about what I would have expected. I
we
guess.
did about as good as we predicted.
Yeah. Let's see. After that, it's Almaz, Alex Smith, and Hambam and Hoji in top 25, which is pretty good, right?
Yep.
Because this tournament had a lot of killers, right? So like you have Kramer and Kami that got 25th as well, and they're amazing players. Yeah.
I think I was really happy to see Hoji and Island Boy do well. So just more, CT. Almaz did great.
Yep.
And it was nice just to meet him because he talks a lot of smack online. I had a feeling that he'd be a nice guy though.
Yeah.
And that was
he is.
confirmed. He's
Right.
like, very normal, like nice guy.
Very normal.
And he went on stream without shoes, which was
He
awesome.
did. He
Yeah.
did. I loved watching Doug beat Almaz because we had actually
7-1. 7-1.
Yeah. we grinded that matchup for a few hours at the hotel room because I play Akuma as my secondary.
Yep.
And then once Doug started beating my Akuma, I was like, okay, like he's ready to go.
Right.
I mean, I respect Almaz for at least accepting it though,
oh, for sure.
because like I knew he wouldn't win, and I don't know, like, I mean, I was like, wow, you're gonna give him his shoes, but at least you're doing it.
Yeah, so definitely respect that. I would have liked to have seen Doug go a little bit further in the tournament. I know he lost to OG on.
Right.
And apparently it was really close, and Doug made an input, like an executional error, which is a shame. A real shame, because I know he's been grinding. But
yeah, what did he get?
I think he didn't make it out of pools.
Oh, that's too bad.
But I know his pool is also on the stronger side. It was just, sometimes it just doesn't go your way.
He lost to Chad the God too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I know Doug, like the Rashid matchup, I think for a lot of characters is pretty rough. So.
Oh yeah, I think Rashid just beats almost everybody.
Yeah, Rashid's just super good.
Yeah.
So he did pretty well, and he lost to people who it's okay to lose to.
Right.
Which I think is the big thing. Like if you lose in tournament, you want it to be to strong players.
Right.
And you can't really be too upset about that.
Yeah, so OG got 9th. I'm not sure how well Chad did, but Chad has won one of the Balance Patch weeklies. And he's just generally a good Rashid player. So, yeah.
But yeah, just really happy with just the play of my friends. I know Groovy Mango didn't make it as far as he wanted to, but his play really shaped up in casuals, which was good to see.
Good.
And I think he almost beat Almaz too. So like it could have it could have easily been him in top 25 instead. Who else? KO did great. Billy made it out top 64, and I think he ended up losing.
And he made it out
JB.
in winners. I forget. I don't know if he won to make it out in winners, but
I know he lost to JB and he lost to somebody else. I forget.
He lost to Almaz.
Almaz. Okay.
Yeah.
I think altogether, strong performance from NEFGC. We had a ton of people finish in that like 17 to 32 range.
Yeah.
Which is
important.
Which is great. Shows our strength, but it's also bittersweet because it's so close to top 16.
Right.
And I mean, realistically, if Zaf and I don't have to play each other at like the top 16 intersection, then it could have easily just been like him and me in top 8.
Yep.
Which would have been great. Or if Burkish ran into characters he was familiar with, like there's so many different narratives that could have all hinged on a 1 or 2 button presses. It's really
and what's funny is if I beat King Birdie, I would have had to play freaking Cool Kid Abigail.
Oh, really?
Like God did not want me to do well in the tournament.
Yeah,
He's
dead
like,
to rights.
every matchup you do not know, here you go. But that's my fault, so I have to learn them now.
Well, we need more players that play those characters.
Yeah.
Here, Nick, I'll learn them all for you. I
Yes.
only know like 5. Okay, I'll learn Colleen and Abigail for you, so you have somebody in mass.
There you go.
But yeah, altogether, I think it was a great showing for New England and pros. I know Samurai even shot me a message on Twitter afterwards, like looking for games, which was exciting.
Yeah,
sick.
And I think we like showed, like a certain like level of pro that we can, play at this high level. And it kind of put us on the map, which I think was the main benefit of the tournament for
Yeah, we
everyone.
definitely did damage. We didn't just go there and get washed over.
Yeah, like we beat some guys up, which felt good.
feels real good. That's awesome. Even despite the team kills, we still did a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Which was inevitable because we made up most of the bracket.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, of course.
Still unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see our guys doing as well or placing better than like notable pros.
Yep, for sure.
It's a big deal.
Just talking about how to think while playing fighting games, and I think this is the biggest hurdle for anybody, no matter what skill level you're at. So if you're a beginner, it's like, how do I press a button? What button do I press? It's more like that's thinking about fighting games in the middle of playing a game, right?
Yep.
In an intermediate level, it's like, how do I adapt? How do I figure my opponent out? And how do you do that on the fly? So it's not like just gathering data beforehand, but gathering data during the round itself, which is extremely difficult. And I think that stays with you up until you're an advanced player.
Yep.
Where because players adapt so quickly, can you continue that kind of cycle where you see a player do something, you respond to it, you learn from it, all within the span of like 30 seconds, right? Very different from other video games like League of Legends where you have a whole half an hour to kind of learn from the opponents and you talk with your team, etc. Fighting games are very in the moment. Like me and Steve talked about a little during Red Bull Battlegrounds, thinking and not thinking at the same time, which is really difficult to understand, but you kind of figure it out.
Yeah,
over
it's
time.
like bodily thinking.
It's like bodily thinking. It's like
I don't
telling
know.
your muscles what to do
Without
Right.
telling them.
and then just letting them do their work.
Yeah. The way I try to think about it is like having a silent conversation with your opponent.
Right.
And I've actually written a little bit like creatively on this, like the whole aspect of like when I'm fighting like Burkish, for example, I try to feel like when is what Nick is doing on screen like reflective of how he's actually feeling, and when is it trying to like deceive me and lead me into doing something else.
Right.
So you have to like not only consider the emotions of your opponent, which won't be expressed in any other way than like their actual play style, but also thinking about it in terms of when we talk about thinking and not thinking at the same time. It's sort of you react to changes. You kind of like, and I hate using this word, but you just like feel it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's when people, they joke about pros detecting like blood in the water. It's like if you can sense anxiety or if you can sense fear, you have to like know how to prey off of that. And conversely, if you sense confidence, you have to know, I'm now fighting a player who believes in himself or believes in herself. And like, how do I adapt to that situation? Because people play differently when they're confident versus when they're timid.
Right.
And trying to understand like when the flip occurs between those two and being able to pick it up off of the slightest thing. Like, oh, this person's leaving, they're leaving their block strings open. They're baiting reversals. Why are they baiting reversals? Are they baiting reversals because they think I'm going to do it? Or are they afraid of losing their turn?
Right.
And like kind of breaking it down on like a more like individual level. What do you guys think?
I completely agree. Nick, you can go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say like the way I look at thinking during matches is just like paying attention. Like you just have to pay attention, which is like something that sounds so simple, but a lot of players don't do it. You just have to see every tiny little thing they do and pay attention to it because it's information for later. Like if you pay attention, then you shouldn't get hit by the same setup 4 times because you paid attention and you saw it. Because the way I look at it is you have to sort of take this current situation where you both are on screen. What position are you? Knocked down? Are you standing up? And you have to, in your head, have an idea what you think they're gonna do. You don't know for certain because you can't know, but you have to somewhat know what they're gonna do. Because if you don't somewhat know what they're going to do, then it's just random.
Yep.
The only way to make it consistent is to have some idea of what they're going to do, which, and the way I like to look at it is by like limiting their potential options in your head. So like you could look at Ryu and think he has a fireball, he has a DP, he has a short, he has a Tatsu, he has crouch medium kick. But when you're at full screen, all you have to think about is Ryu has a fireball, right? Like, so you have to limit the amount of options down to like one or two and just think about, okay, what is the best way I can deal with that, right? So it's like, oh, like I just dashed in on Nakali a couple times. Is he going to stick out a stand roundhouse? So maybe I'll chill outside stand roundhouse. Oh, look, he dashed in because he's smart. You know what I mean? Like, you have to, it's constantly seeing what mode your opponent's in. Like, if they're standing back whiffing jabs, maybe you shouldn't jump because they're just trying to take you out and react to something. And so, like, that's the biggest thing is thinking about what state of mind the opponent is in. Like, say I corner Cammy, she's close to stun and has 1 bar V reversal. They're not gonna throw tech because they're gonna wait to be put in block stun so they can V reversal. So then you can just throw them to death. So you just have to constantly think what state of mind your opponent is in, so that you can counter that. And then the smarter players will understand this and they'll do a counter to that. But like, it's just important to have this basic wheel of options that covers each other's expected option. And obviously at top level, it's not just like I figured you out. There is no such thing as in this game as, unless there are bad players, of I figured you out. Like, a smart player will always be adapting. But you can figure out certain things that then they have to switch up. You know what I mean? You have to be able to force your opponent to switch things up.
Yep. You can like amass an arsenal of like options that are strong.
Exactly.
And I totally agree with because I think I've even expressed that to you in some of our casual sets. Like, it doesn't feel like we figure each other out. It just feels like
we just keep switching up.
Yeah. Like,
because like our casual. Yeah, go on.
Oh, actually, no, you go on. Your voice sounded excited there.
Oh yeah, okay. I was gonna say our casuals are like I don't think we've ever played a set that isn't like 50 to 50. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's just ridiculous how close our sets are. But it's just, and it's like the funny thing is we usually end up like hard adapting to each other, but then we do it the opposite way. Like, one of us, like, you'll 5-0 me, I'll 5-0 you, then it's 3-3, and then it's like it's always insane.
But it kind of goes into that idea of like, once you get to a certain level, it is, like Nick said, no longer just figuring somebody out. It's you've realized during the match like what you can get away with and what you can't, which changes from player to player. Like, when I fought LPN, I realized about halfway through game 2, I actually just can't dash in on him. At least not without creating a distraction first. Like, if I just dash in neutral, he will punish it, which was terrifying. But I think like people also have to understand, like, everybody always has the same amount of options for the most part, like excluding meter, right? Yeah. Like, every character's base moves are set, and both players have perfect information.
Yeah.
And it's up to them to decide what to do with it. And you can get away with, like, I'm making quotes with my fingers, you can't see them. You can get away with scrubbier options if you earn them by creating distractions and creating diversions. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing people don't consider in terms of thinking about fighting games. It's they want to do X because X nets them damage, and X instills fear in the opponent, and X carries with it all these other benefits, but they don't quite know how to set up X. For example, I was talking to Aaron about this, Groovy Mango, the Colleen player. It feels really great to put yourself in a minus situation as Colleen and then do EX counter and blow it up. Because you bait your opponent into attacking you, you counter the move, you get 200 damage, you get like 200 stun, you get a hard knockdown. All these beautiful, beautiful things happen for you when you set that situation up. But a lot of players, and every character has the proverbial Colleen counter. They all have that thing they want to do. That's great. But Stand Fierce, for example. But in Aaron's case, we were talking about how do you convince your opponent to hit a button and get that counter? And you have to, I call it like, it's kind of like building a sandwich or like constructing your damage or your mix-up. You have to build it from the ground up where you condition them to do the response that you want. So you can't actually cash out on your situations until you've developed them to some extent. So in the Colleen example, you would put yourself at a negative situation and then block and give the turn back to your opponent. And if you give them the turn enough times, they'll think it's just theirs for free, and that's when you break out the counter.
Right. And part of that is also understanding the skill level of the opponent.
Yep.
And trying to figure that out as soon as possible within a game if you don't know their name. Because something like that may be, even though you do have perfect information on all the characters, right? Everybody should know all the frame data for every character because it's readily available to them. That doesn't mean that the opponent knows it.
Exactly.
So if they're a bad player and maybe they just press buttons all the time, right? So they know, so you know that because they were conditioned before the round to press buttons all the time, you can just do that counter in a minus situation, a plus situation, whatever. But a better player may know, oh, all Colleen's do counter after a minus situation, like hands counter,
Yep.
right? So even though you know that is minus, and a lot of players will press a button after a minus situation, and you can counter it, that doesn't mean that the other player isn't conditioned by other players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And so maybe you can't do a counter until, like Steve says, you establish something from the ground up. You have to start at the opponent's base knowledge.
Yep.
And try to infer something from there.
Yeah, and assess it as well as you can before you start making those adaptations.
Right.
That's why you may have noticed in my match with OG Jan, one of the first checks I do, and it's also good to even to make a note on your phone of what are your baseline checks going to be to assess your opponent.
Yeah.
And one of my things I always keep in mind is a check I always make is after I do a stomp, I look at what they do. Specifically, if I do a stomp and I know that both players know it's at a safe range, does the opponent try to advance and walk into my space? So you'll notice whenever I did that to OG Jan, he would walk into my space and I'd jab him out of it every single time. So I was putting myself into a minus situation, seeing what they would do. So that's the first test. If the answer to that is walk, I hit buttons. If the answer to that is hit buttons, then I just do nothing and I see the turn.
Yeah, and that's just goes back to what I said, is just paying attention.
Yep.
I think in the beginning you play as safe as possible and pay attention to what they do.
Yep.
Because everybody has their own personality and their own way to play, and once you are able to figure out what that is by just playing safe, maybe right away you go for really tight frame traps, don't press a lot of buttons in neutral, just kind of feel each other out. It's just a good way to keep information for later, which that's why you'll see a lot of times in the last round or two, people just explode and it's kind of like cashing out all of these reads they have on the opponent.
Yep.
Yeah, in addition to just paying attention, I think it does all go back to what both of y'all said, in that you need to understand the opponent's state of mind and capitalize off of that. And that's one of the reasons I really don't like online, is because that kind of understanding is very hard to glean, I guess.
There's just less on the line.
There's just less on the line. There's lag. People just kind of just do things online when in person they don't necessarily just do things. It's like two different ships just passing in the water. You're not actually having that kind of silent conversation with your opponent. You're just talking into the void.
Yep.
And hoping things work, which is why I really hope that everybody that listens to this goes to locals, whether it be Balance Patch or if they go to a major, if they travel, etc. I really hope that you do that, because then you can have that kind of silent conversation and understand other players and understand how to play. When it comes to online, the reason people say it will build your bad habits is because you're not having that conversation with the opponent. You're just doing what you do.
Yeah, and it doesn't give you an opportunity to be exposed.
Yeah. But yeah, thinking while playing, a little bit of thinking and not thinking. It's so weird. Those checks, I think a lot of people don't do, that you were talking about, Steve. A lot of, at least weaker players, they won't do checks, right? They'll just do things.
Yeah.
And then they won't learn anything in the middle of the match from it. So you said a more advanced example, I think, because it's based both off of spacing and a minus situation. But something simple like a frame trap, right? If you just do Nikali crouching medium punch, Nikali crouching medium punch again.
Yep.
Do they press a button? And then you can immediately learn from that whether or not a person wants to press buttons in the middle of things. And if they do, that's probably going to carry over for the rest of a set if you're in a tournament, or the rest of a set if you're playing online. They'll probably keep doing that. Even though don't psych yourself out. I think that's one of the most important things to not do when playing fighting games. don't think that the opponent will adapt.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing is like you kind of have to wait for them to show you because like you can like do the same thing 5 times and you're like he has to adapt but maybe he won't. So like I mean the easiest way like if you do think someone will adapt, the easiest thing to do is just pick like your safest option. You know what I mean? So it's like I'll maybe do like a walk back delay sort of meaty situation because I have no idea perhaps what this person will do if like you put them in a new situation. But
Right.
you know, like you can't assume someone will adapt. So like if you throw them 5 times, just might as well keep throwing them, just to kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I feel honestly that I win at least half of my matches just by following one strategy, and the other player doesn't figure it out, or not even that they don't figure it out. They keep just doing the same thing, and I
Yeah.
never have to change. And it's not worth spending the mental resources to mix things up if
Yeah.
one thing is just going to work the whole time.
Yeah, for sure. Like another thing is like, I feel like a lot of like the players that are still trying to get better aren't willing to take like it's almost a risk by not taking a risk because like in their head they're thinking, oh, I can't just throw 5 times. I have to do something else. Like if a simple strategy is working and it's like for example like if they keep jumping then just and you keep anti-airing, make sure you stand at a range where they might jump. You know what I mean? Like, just like constantly like put yourself in a situation where you can get damaged. Like if there's a strategy that you know is working, put yourself in that situation as much as possible. I mean,
Yep.
don't just like you shouldn't just happen to be in that situation. You should tell yourself this person is doing this. I'm gonna make sure I'm in a situation that I can take advantage of it because it's a clear weakness.
Yep. And I think Drake and you touched on a good point a few minutes ago about like there being different levels of checks.
Mhm.
And that's something I'd encourage every aspiring player to do is like understand at a base level, like the simple things you want to figure out going into a match. And then maybe have something that's like one level deeper and another level deeper. Like you talked about the frame trap example, which I think is a great level 1. I think another really important thing that some people don't think about is while you're doing your first couple of block strings, pay attention to see if your opponent is stand blocking or crouch blocking.
Because so many people get away with walking back.
Yeah, and that's I mean that worked a ton for me at Red Bull. I would just walk out of pressure. But it's kind of like because people want to set up the frame trap versus throw game, like that's so strong in this game, right? But you can't engineer that until you convince your opponent to stop blocking back.
Yeah.
So I'd really implore anybody listening to this to like the very first thing you have to set up is that you'll go low as like your second button, not necessarily your first, but you know, you do your meaty and then check them low. And if that hits, all of a sudden you're getting free damage off of a low confirm. If they start blocking it, now they're rooted, they're in place, and it gives you the opportunity to throw them. Mm-hmm. So there's so much actually going on beyond just, you know, plus and minus and blocking and getting hit. Like every piece is kind of building, we'll call it a, you know, Street Fighter puzzle or puzzle fighter if you want to get the memes going. But we're constructing these situations out of nothing.
Yeah.
So you have to think to yourself as a player, like, what am I, you know, air quotes, telling my opponent? And what am I convincing them to do? And then you, whatever it is, if it works, you just keep doing it until it stops working. And once it stops working, you move on to something else. But you always have to keep in mind, like, what you're trying to engineer during the match and at what points you can cash out on it. And that is a really, really, really hard concept for people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
And admittedly, it's something I haven't really added to my game until like this spring or this summer. Like it's just really hard. Yeah. It's like you have to be comfortable enough with your character to begin with. And once you feel like you can do everything you want, like once you feel you can replicate your own thoughts on the screen, then you have to think about constructing situations. And if we want to call it like macro level of play, we can call it that.
And it's a good point about being comfortable with your character because like you can make these adaptations, but if you can't think of a counter, then it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So like you have to be able to see what they're doing and instantly know the counter to it.
Yep. It goes such a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in a character crisis, don't just pick a character. I know it's hard, but I feel like most good players do have some kind of counter pick, right? But they're still comfortable with both characters. They can still think on their feet, and because fighting games is all about thinking in the moment, and you know, doing some data gathering beforehand, but thinking in the moment, and not thinking in the moment, everything needs to be natural. If you're having a character crisis and you want to be an actual competitor, you need to just pick a character, and that sounds simple, but a lot of this sounds simple, but is actually really difficult to execute on.
Yeah, because I think, and the reason for that might be because it's easy to think about in terms of concepts.
Yeah.
But it's hard to make that a unconscious process in your
Yeah.
own body.
I think you should just start off being super conscious in the middle of a round.
Yep.
Before you kind of figure out that kind of flow, right? So just in casuals, just be thinking all the time, and you'll probably perform worse. Honestly.
Yeah, you will perform worse.
Yeah, you will perform worse if you're just thinking the whole time instead of just kind of like feeling it out a little bit. You'll perform worse, but I think you'll get to the point where you can do both, and it will be very beneficial.
Yep. It should get to the point where your character and your actions on screen are just very, very close extensions of your own brain.
Yeah.
And it's almost, think about it in terms of like a muscle. Like your brain is a muscle. Any process you do with your brain at first will be weird. Like playing an instrument. I call it smart hands, where like you play an instrument and you suck, and then you go to bed and you wake up the next day and you can then like just do it all of a sudden. Like you have to be comfortable with the growing pains and understand that like putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation now will, return benefits in the future.
Yep. And that's what going out to locals is about. Maybe uncomfortable now, but you'll figure it out.
Yep,
a lot of this does kind of get thrown out if you're playing against somebody who doesn't care, right? So like the Kazunokos of the world, like they're so good at figuring out risk reward and then just doing it, and maybe
Punko
not
is another
adapting.
one.
Huh? Punko, yes, exactly.
He doesn't care about adaptation. He's gonna do the same thing against everybody.
Yep. I think Nemo's play, very, very strong, very good conversions. Plays similarly against literally everybody.
Yeah, he doesn't change it up enough.
Yeah. But it works, right? So for players like that, maybe it's a little less thinking on your feet and maybe a little bit more gathering data beforehand.
Yeah, those are the type of players that will try to run you over before.
Yeah, before you can figure out.
Yeah, before you even know what hit you.
Like they'll jump in immediately, they'll dash up, just anything.
Yep.
Anything. It is so hard and it's so difficult to deal with players like that. They're more risky players a lot of times. They just don't care, but they're also high reward players.
Yep.
And I'm not quite sure what to do against players like that because that's not something I've really encountered. So I wonder from you two, maybe as a closing thing, what y'all think about players who you just can't adapt to on the fly that quickly because they move so quickly. They already have a set game plan. And for a lot of newer players, that'll be pretty much anybody, right?
True.
But for more intermediate to advanced players, that would maybe be more foreign players that they've never played before, or just people who have that kind of play style.
So the way I deal with crazy players, and I'm personally not even super good at playing against the crazy players, but they just want to be on the offensive. And I think Drake and you said this once, is you kind of counter their offense with your offense, like with your own offense, yeah. And so like basically your goal to beat a crazy player is to get them to think. Because if they're just not thinking and going in, you have to like purposely do some unsafe things that they like, oh, I can anti-air, I can punish that. And you want to get them to stand still again. You know what I mean? Like, so if there's this like Rashid player that just keeps dashing and jumping in, like you want to start dashing in and jumping in, and then he'll think, oh, I can beat that, I can sweep that, I can anti-air that. And then he'll just be chilling and he's going to wait for you to start hanging yourself. And then that's when you can start, playing in normal neutral.
I mean, this whole time I've been trying to think how I'd answer this. I guess my approach to a stubborn player is I try all my options till I find the one thing that they're not good at. And that's part of the reason Kazunoko and Punko are so successful, is because they're just good at everything. So you can't like exploit a weakness as much. But normally, I'd say 90% of the time when you're fighting a crazy player, they are, especially if you're playing ranked. Let's use online ranked as an example. You're fighting some Diamond or Mika, and their offense is unbelievable. And you're like, wow, like I'm just getting steamrolled. And you have to think, man, why are they Diamond? They're Diamond because they win 2 out of 3 sets. Why are they winning 2 out of 3 sets? Because what they're doing, people can't deal with. Okay, what do I look for then for that one time where they lose? And just go through your options, cycle through what you need to do, like try everything until you find something that works. And then once you have like a little sliver of success, there's either 2 responses. Option 1 is they're going to uppercut because they want you to stop. Option 2 is you're going to start to instill fear. And once you kind of like start that process of getting them to fear you, you can actually like break players apart, especially the crazy ones. Just by kind of like Nick said, the power of your own offense. Like you just have to find that zone of control, which always exists, no matter what, no matter how helpless you feel in a match. You can sort of like retake the flow if you can find it.
Yeah.
So
like
I guess
you can't allow the crazy players to be crazy. Like you have to neutralize them.
Yep. And then once you kind of slow it down a little bit, or just have, you know, a sprinkle of success, you have to be able to like expand upon that and sort of put that confidence back in your own game, which can be hard because it's very jarring to play against, you know, a crazy player.
Cool. Well, I think that's it for now. Unless
Hey, one
y'all
more
have
thing,
anything
Jacob.
more.
What do you
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
of what do you think of Buki's new V trigger where she throws a refrigerator at the opponent?
I know, right? I know nothing.
You
I
haven't
saw
seen
it. No, I saw it, but like, there's nothing
thing is
to actually
ginormous.
glean from that video. You know, like, I assume that these are all installs that add to certain specials. So like, even though Ibuki's, it only showed what, like, her throwing it real quick and then it came back, so it was like I guess it was a shuriken that's like a boomerang. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I don't
don't
know why
have-
you. I feel like Bomb is just gonna be way better.
Bomb's probably gonna be better than anything they give her, right?
Mhm.
Like, if they give her a better V trigger, then like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Unless they nerf her everywhere else.
Yeah.
So
It kind of reminded me of the Demon Wind Shuriken from Naruto a little
yes,
bit.
exactly. That is what. Yes, that is actually exactly it.
Yeah, and I was like, yo, like, is
so
it gonna
funny.
like, is it gonna transform into like Naruto halfway through?
Oh, we didn't even talk about. Oh my god, this is gonna be such a long episode if we do this. But like, we didn't even talk about that V trigger trailer, which I thought was really hype. I know people wanted like Sagat and shit, but I don't think new characters like Sagat, or well, old characters like Sagat, will change the game in a way to make the game better. So
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we got more mechanics.
yeah,
And we got a peek into the future of the game, which seems more diverse.
Seems more diverse. Seems like you can do different combos. Seems like different moves have different properties, which I think is really fun.
Yep.
It kind of goes back to what we originally saw with Street Fighter V in the original trailer, where we saw like crazy combos from both Chun-Li and Ryu, like going all over the place with different move properties than you would expect from older Street Fighter games, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I would leave it at, just because I don't want to take too much time, but
Yeah.
just saying that like it looks like the game's headed in a great direction, and I think at this point, if you've seen that and you're still upset about like we're running out, in my opinion, of reasons to be upset with this game, because Capcom is admittedly trying really hard to correct them. So
Yeah.
like I think what we're seeing out of that trailer looks like it's moving in the right direction. I think the only remaining gripe I would have would be like, I don't think characters should get full combos after dash in, after a crush counter. Like, but that's like so nitpicky at this point. Like, I think
Yeah,
the
see-
game is a lot more solid than people give it credit for.
Yeah, like for me, like I'm fine with the dashing combos. I just think if you have a button that allows you to have a dashing combo, I think it should be minus 1,000,000 on
Yeah.
block.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. I think at this point, if you don't like the game and you don't like what's coming out, then you're not going to like the game. And that's okay. Nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that.
totally fine. It really looks like Capcom's trying.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for coming by, Steve. It's awesome having you on. Hopefully, maybe we could have you on again at some point, because I think talking about, I guess, the deeper concepts of fighting
Yeah.
games is so fun.
It is.
And it's so difficult too. It's so difficult to think about, and then even more difficult to apply.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And one thing I'm trying to work on really hard is taking a lot of players in that like intermediate space
yeah,
and trying to like explain some of the concepts, because a lot of the stuff with fighting games is you won't even know things are happening if somebody doesn't tell you that it's happening.
Yeah, that's the exact reason I wanted this section. Was like I want people like, because people know what like punishing a dash in, but they don't even think about like oh, I should be looking for a dash. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's just like pointing out what they know works on a base level and understanding like the deeper meaning of it.
Yeah, and that's probably why half of like, for example, like if we use Kami, like Kami's friends with amazing players, and they probably have told him some of the finer points. So now he understands them and he's able to apply them.
Yep.
Even though we haven't heard of this player before. So it's like, who knows how many great players we could have if we just told them about things that you might not even consider thinking of.
Right.
Unless someone brought it up in the first place. It's almost like you can't know until, and trying to figure that out on your own is a nightmare.
It's hard. It takes a long time.
Yeah, it's so brutal.
Yeah. So I hope y'all are listening.
Yeah, for sure. So
yes. We need like our 5th viewer maybe will finally become a great player.
So yeah, I think an episode like with a a more precise game plan, because we're kind of just spitballing here.
Oh yeah, for
generally
for
speaking.
sure. I agree.
But like we could even do like a question and answer thing where like you get some community feedback on concepts they don't know, or we could each just come up with a list of higher level, in-depth concepts to explain.
So let's start with the community feedback thing. We've had a huge response from Sarah, in my opinion, so far, on people who just like want to ask us questions or want to get some kind of information from us. So let's make it so in the future we'll have an episode dedicated to these kinds of concepts and create a game plan for like the newer players, intermediate players, and on. So just submit some questions for us on some concepts that you don't understand, and we'll talk about them for sure.
Yeah, and one more thing. Next week, I think we're gonna try to do like a more anime centered episode, because I know Beautiful Dude is coming up.
Yeah.
So like we'll answer those questions, because there are some anime questions that we've been ignoring, but I've been waiting for like a guest that actually knows about it.
Right, for sure.
But we'll get there.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for coming by, Steve.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was a real treat.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next week.
See ya.
All right,
See ya.
bye.